Hi, my name is Tim Ramzier. I'm the Executive Director for the Youth for Christ of the Wabash Valley. And I've been doing that since the year 2000, and I've been a youth pastor and youth worker for many years before that. And I'd like to give you a little bit of a story or a little bit background about what Youth for Christ is about. I've gotten that question quite a bit over the last few months and actually the last few years. What does Youth for Christ do? So I'd like to give you a little bit of brief history about what Youth for Christ is and how it came to be. Back in the early 40s, or actually the mid-40s, Youth for Christ started up through Billy Graham, who decided to reach out to the youth of the community and actually to the United States as a whole by doing rallies. That approach lasted for many years, actually into the 50s and the early 60s, where after doing rallies, they decided to reach out to the youth in particular by doing clubs instead of rallies. The rallies were mostly large group environments where they would have a lecture or a big talk going on. And they switched in the 60s to smaller group environments where they could reach and go into the homes of the youth, and they started to focus mostly on middle school or junior high, as well as high school students. And that became their focus for several years after that. Then in the 70s and into the early 80s, and especially in the 90s, they moved into a different direction where they started to do more relational outreach to youth. In the early 90s, they started doing relationship outreach where they started reaching different groups of kids depending on their various needs. Things like not just middle school and high school with Campus Life JV, but they started reaching out into the juvenile centers and reaching kids who are incarcerated as well. Then they started reaching out to the youth who are involved in the military, or at least their parents were, and they had the high needs of those situations where the young people were being moved around quite a bit because their parents were changing stations. Then they also moved into a situation where they dealt with teen moms and teen dads, where young people were having children, and they felt the need to reach out to them as they're going through that process as well. City Life became another one, where they reached out to the youth who are mostly in urban settings. We discovered nowadays that about 70% of youth are in an urban environment today. We also have an outreach to deaf teens, teens who have hearing impairments or are completely deaf. Oftentimes they're overlooked as a special needs group. We reach out to camps. We use camps to reach kids in the summer times, and this was actually just established about a half a dozen years ago. About 6 years ago, 7 years ago, they started using various camps throughout the United States to reach out to the youth, seeing their needs, that they could isolate them in the summer months or certain times of the year and just really pour into their lives. We have World Outreach, where we take kids who have a calling on their life to reach outside of the boundaries of the United States and reach kids in other environments across the globe. Each ministry that I've just mentioned has the goal of reaching 11 to 19-year-olds by aligning themselves with local churches and with like-minded individuals who want to see these youth become lifelong followers of Christ. Followers who are devoted to reading their scriptures, who are devoted to prayer, who are devoted to a godly lifestyle, and who want to reach out to their friends as well and become involved in their community through social outreaches. This is what's behind Youth for Christ. We accomplish that by using 5 strategies. We call these strategies our 5 essentials. The first one is widespread prayer. We solicit and ask other people to pray for us continuously as we reach out to the youth in our communities. The second one is loving relationships. This is where we reach out to the youth to tell them that Christ loves them and wants to enter into a relationship with them so that they will have a life that is filled with love in the midst of darkness. Our third one is faithful Bible teaching. This is my favorite. Faithful Bible teaching in a sense that we rightly divide the scriptures. We use them in a context that is important for everyday life. There is an application, not just the information. And we don't use the stereotypes or the cliches that you often hear perhaps, but we dig deep in what the Word actually says and how it's applied to the youth in their lives today. The fourth one is collaborative work through other groups in our community. Similar to going into schools, Wabash Valley is blessed with a relationship with the school corporations, both in Clay and Vigo County. And these school corporations come alongside us and allow us to go into the schools and reach out to the kids. We also have a wonderful working relationship with many of the churches in the community, where they send us or allow us to use their youth workers or youth pastors to come alongside us as we go into the schools to reach as many youth as possible. That's truly collaborative. And finally, adults who empower. We seek to find adults to work alongside us who will reach out to the youth and empower the youth as they look to understand how Christ means to them, how Christ works in their life. So we have these 5 essentials to help us as we go into the communities and reach out to the youth and draw them into the kingdom more and more.